Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you another review, and as you can tell, another entry in Oscar reviews. Today I'm reviewing a film that I watched yesterday, and it's a film that I heard about a few years back, and I guess you could say I've been semi-curious about it because of the subject matter. And I was flipping through movies on Netflix yesterday, and I'm like, you know what? I've been meaning to watch this film, might as well watch it, especially considering it fits for this month. And that film, of course, is the Franklin Schaffner, or Schaffner, however his last name is pronounced, directed film from 1978, starring Gregory, Peck, Laurence, Olivier, and James Mason, the boys from Brazil. It is based on a novel by Ira Levin of the same name, and the only other books that this author wrote that I am familiar with are Rosemary's Baby and The Stepford Wives. Which, of course, all three were made in the movie, so it's a little funny. And I guess that's probably why they're his best known ones. Now, I will go into spoilers a little bit later on in this film, in this review, because I have to do that in order to properly deal with it. But I'm going to try to do the brief synopsis at the beginning. Now, first, before I go anything, what did I think of this film? Well, I'll say this is not a perfect film, and it's not the best film I've ever seen from the 70s, and it's definitely a step down from the film Schaffner had directed 10 years previously, Planet of the Apes, and probably even Patton, even though I haven't seen it yet. It is still a good film. I don't know if it's the fact that this type of story fits better as a novel, maybe it's how the novel was translated to the screen, maybe certain elements could have been done better. But it is still an entertaining film. And it's mostly because of who we got in the lead roles. I mean, Laurence Olivier as Ira Levin. We got Gregory Peck as Dr. Joseph Mengele. And of course we got James Mason as Edward Sabert. And of course in a small role we even got Steve Guttenberg. So, that was not the light. Now, the plot of the film is that in Brazil, we are introduced to Barry Kohler, played by Guttenberg, and when you see him in this film, you see that he was very young when he did this. And it's like, when I was watching the movie, I'm like, why do I recognize this guy? Because I had missed out on the credits because I was in the other room while I was playing. I'm like, oh, it's Guttenberg. Now, he notices something weird going on, and he keeps his eye on it, and he eventually stumbles upon a secret organization of Third Reich war criminals having meetings in Paraguay. Which, of course, if you know your history, you know that a lot of the Nazi war criminals hid out in South America, you know, in Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, and countries like that. And as he's watching this, he eventually finds out that one of the men there is Dr. Joseph Mengele, the infamous Auschwitz doctor, who, you know, if you know your history, conducted many experiments at the concentration camps, which is the reason he's a war criminal. Now, after seeing this, he decides to phone Ira Levin, who is an aging Nazi hunter living in Austria. And of course, by this time, the interest in catching war criminals has waned, which I have to say is kind of sad in the context of the film, and also a little bit in real life if you think about it. Because a lot of these people, like Mengele, at the time the movie was made, was still alive. He died like a few months after the film was released. So it is kind of sad that that guy who did all that stuff died basically a free man. I mean, people like Stalin died like that, but he died being crazy, so his kind of did balance out a little bit. But anyway, getting back to on topic. Lieberman, as you can guess, is skeptical because it's, as you see, he does a good job of saying it. You not know that there are Nazis in Paraguay. I said just to get out of there. Now, eventually, Kohler records some of the conversation and shows it to Lieberman over the phone. But by that point, Mengele and the rest of the Nazis are onto him and they kill him. But not before Kohler tells Lieberman the plan Mengele and the others had been discussing, and that is that he is sending a group of 6 Nazis to kill 94 men in different countries, including Austria, Germany, Denmark, Holland, Norway, Sweden, Canada, England, and the United States. The murders have to happen within the next few years, around certain dates. This is where the plot begins to start, and one thing I will say is that the film doesn't say right away what the reason is. I'll give it that. At least it holds that part so that it actually could be a genuine thriller, and I'm guessing that's part of the holdover from the novel. And of course we're on equal footing with Lieberman to a point, whereas he doesn't know what on earth is going on. We as the audience see earlier on what's going on, or can infer more just from watching, because we get to see both sides, whereas Lieberman only has his side. Now, Lieberman follows, of course, Kohler's leads at the beginning, and he begins to investigate, and he notices that there are suspicious deaths, and these deaths are of aging civil servants. He goes and talks with their widows, and he begins to notice that their sons, who are adopted, have black hair and blue eyes, all have an uncanny resemblance. Now, they're adopted, so you could always make the argument when it's like you see 1 and 2 like that, that they were adopted, that they were twins that were separated and adopted by 2 separate families, and you just had the... It was a coincidence that you ran... It was a coincidence that you ran into them. But when it's 3 and 4, it's like, okay, there's something weird going on here. And that's where the plot comes into it. And that's about all the plot I'm going to go into in the non-spoiling part of it. Let's just say the rest of it that involves this, and it comes to a head at the end, and it actually is an interesting ending, and it actually makes me want to get the book and read it. Now, the movie was made for $12 million, which I don't know what that would be in '78 money, but that'd be like a small budget nowadays. But I'm guessing for the late '70s, it probably was at least a medium-sized budget. And it made $19 million. And it also says $7.6 million in rentals, so I don't know if that $7.6 million is coming from it or that's an additional, but at least it made some of its money back, but it's sad it didn't make more. And I think part of it was the reviews, or maybe just a lack of interest in it. Now, it seems that this movie has gotten a fan base over the years, because it has a 7.0 on IMDb, a 67 with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 69 with the critics. So it has a good sized fan base, and makes me wonder if there is a special DVD of this film. I'd say if there was, I'd probably pick it up for curiosity's sake, you know, just to see, depending on if it has some good features on it, like a documentary or something. If it just was a bare bones one, I'd probably pass. But, like, you can tell it is worth one watch, and like I said, I do like it. Now, what to say about the acting? The acting does a good job. I mean, one of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes says that the leads are overacting. Olivier, I haven't seen most of his other any of his other stuff, so I can't compare his performance, but I thought he did a pretty good job. At times it feels like they might have miscast him, but maybe it's because that's how he was playing it for that. And like I said, I don't have anything else to compare him. I know he did 3 Shakespeare movies, but I've only seen 2 of those ones done, so and I haven't seen those ones specifically, so I can't really compare them. So I can't really judge his style fairly just by what I see in the movie. But there are other scenes where he does come alive, and it seems like he is playing it as a guy is an aging Nazi hunter, so he does get that part. James Mason, I thought he did a good job as well for the small role he's given. I haven't seen most of his work. The only film I know him from is the Hitchcock film North by Northwest, where he played the main villain, which he did an excellent job there. Only other thing I know him from is Eddie Izzard constantly doing his impression of him in his videos. That sounds a bit like God, don't I? Are you going to do this James Mason impression throughout the whole video? Oh yes, Jeezy Crazy, what is that? I know I kind of suck at it, but I've never practiced at James Mason. I practice more like Christopher Walken. That's my forte. I'm naked. And then of course Gregory Peck as Mengele. He does an excellent job. Like Olivier, I don't really have that much to compare his work to. I know he won the Oscar for To Kill a Mockingbird. That's what he won the Oscar for. I've only seen bits and pieces of that, but I have to say he kind of deserved it. And you can tell in this movie he has those chops. He does seem like he's going a little overboard at times, but I'm guessing Mengele probably had something wrong up here, so I'm going to go with that. And also, considering I don't know how much footage of Mengele Peck could have looked at, if any, at this time, considering he was a war criminal, he's basically going more on reputation to define the character and whatever the character could have done, plus the fact the guy was a Nazi, so he's building basically the character from scratch. Which you have to give Peck at least a little bit of an applause for that he's basically creating something from scratch, which for a fake character is standard, but for playing a real character is a little harder. Unless it's a character like in the way past, where we basically only have a written record that may or may not be accurate, but that's a whole different story. And he really does make you hate this guy. He has a little bit of a charm to him, but like I said, there seems to be a little bit of psychosis underneath there that makes you want to smack him. And of course, once the end of the movie comes, you really are happy what happens. I'm not going to spoil it here. Now, of course, you guys know the drill. I'm going to pick up something, give you guys like 6 seconds to pause it or skip ahead if you don't want me to, if you don't want to hear this, but if you do, you know, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the experiment that Mengele does in this movie is cloning. And now I will say, the way they explain how the cloning process works in this film does sound a little far-fetched, and I don't know if real-life cloning works that way. If it does, I'm surprised they didn't explain it easier like this, but for the context of the movie and the time period that it took place in, I can buy it. The process is basically they take female egg cells, irradiate them, which I think it just destroys the outside, and then implant DNA in it, and then reimplant the male DNA or DNA in general. It could be from like blood into the egg, and then reimplant it in the female. And they use rabbits as an example, and 1 month later, baby rabbits. But the mother was a white rabbit, and the father donor was a black rabbit, so the babies are black rabbits. It's interesting. And apparently this process was used by Mengele in the cloning techniques. But here is the gist. I think you guys can probably already tell where I'm going, who he's cloning. Which, of course, I already knew this twist going in, so maybe that's why I'm watching it. I'm thinking, okay, they probably could have built up this twist a little bit better, maybe hid some obvious signs, but the cloning procedure was used to make 94 clones of Adolf Hitler. That's right. Now, the reason for this is that Mengele is trying to create another Führer. Obviously, since he's cloning Hitler, he wants it to be, you know, genetically that way. But they're going a step further. Not only are they trying to recreate Hitler genetically, they're also trying to recreate him mentally. And that's the rub. Because, think of it, even if you clone a person, they're going to end up growing up to be a different person unless they're in the exact same environment, and even then it might not succeed. Which is why I guess they go with 94. But that is the reason why they send him to specific areas. An older father, who was a civil servant, younger mother, who dotes on the kid, father dies when he hits a specific age. I think you guys see the plan and why they're executing this, because the father just has to die. It doesn't say he has to die the same way that Hitler's dad did. Though I don't know how Hitler's dad died. And as we see with each kid, they do have artistic pursuits in one way or another, which at this point I got to give a little bit of props to the actor playing all the kids, Jeremy Black, which doesn't have a page, so I don't think he went on to do anything, but he does do a good job in all this, because considering, even though he's playing genetically identically people, they each have different personalities to a point, and also different accents, so I give him props for that. Not Oscar-worthy, but pretty good for a kid actor. Who this probably was his only big thing. Now, as you would expect, the whole plot does come ahead at the end with Mengele and Lieberman actually confronting one another at the home of one of the clones, which this is probably the only clone that we actually see in the movie I worry about a little bit, and that's because we get a little bit of an indication that his father was a racist. Now think about that, one of the clones of Adolf Hitler living with a racist. Granted, the guy's racist against blacks, but if you think about it, Nazis and neo-Nazis are racist against anyone who's not Aryan, so don't think it would matter anyway. It's just, you'd be hating that group before any other group. And I'm not really going to spoil the whole ending. I'll just say Mengele's death involves Dobermans and leave it at that. And he does try to convince this clone that he is Hitler, but I don't think he believes it. But the one thing I do like about this movie, even though it's talking about Adolf Hitler clones, is that at the end it does actually mention that even if you did clone a person, you shouldn't judge the clone based on who they're cloned from. Like, in this case, we shouldn't judge the 94 boys just because they are genetic duplicates of Hitler. They are their own people. If they grow up to be sociopaths, then we deal with them. You don't kill them when they're innocent, because that's what one of the side characters suggests to Lieberman, that Lieberman now has a list that Mengele had, so it's his responsibility and duty to go kill the 94 people, and he says he can't do that because they're innocent. And I happen to agree with him on that. Now, the one that we see at the end, he's probably the only one I'd worry about, so keep an eye on him, and if he starts to do anything, then you probably should deal with him. But they're innocent. Doesn't matter. Maybe one of the ones in the United States, could grow up in this world's timeline, become a politician like Hitler was, but actually go in the opposite direction, become a great person, become a president like in the vein of Lincoln. You know, think about it. Maybe one of the clones finds a cure for cancer or something. It's that it's just stuff like kind of hard to explain fully, but I think I've gotten the gist out of it. It's that don't judge them just because of who they're descended from. It's just like you don't judge a person based on who their parents are. Like if their parents are crazy drug addicts or insane mass murderers, you don't base your opinion of them off of their parents. And that is spoiler thing concluded. Now, if there's any problem with the film, it's like I said earlier, it's paced weird at points, and it seems like some of the translation from book to movie could have been done better. It's easier if you watch the film yourself, and then it's easier if you watch the film and you notice it. I'll probably notice it more after I give it a second watch, but I'm going to wait to read the book before giving it a second watch so I can notice this more, see if it actually still bothers me. But for now it does. And my rating for The Boys from Brazil, I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, it does have that 70s look shot-wise, but it does seem to have the money. There are some great shots of other countries, and all the principal actors do good for what they have to do. Some of them have more than others, but the film is mostly about Peck, Olivier, and to a lesser extent Mason. But Peck and Olivier are the two lead ones. Now, it got nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Actor for Olivier, Best Original Score for Jerry Goldsmith, which is not his best score, but it's still pretty good, and Film Editing. I'm actually surprised Olivier got nominated over Peck, but that's the Academy sometimes. Like I said, 4 out of 5 stars. If you are a fan of historical films, or I wouldn't say this is historical, this is more like historical fiction, but it also has a sci-fi thriller. If you're a fan of those genres, I'd say give it a watch.